Hello guys, you are here with Code Purpose, and today we are going to start off a new series about object-oriented programming, or as it's called, OOP. So before we start, I'm going to do a little introduction what OOP means. Object-oriented programming is a programming model where programs are organized around objects and data rather than the action and logic. OOP, or Object-Oriented Programming, allows decomposition of a problem into a number of entities called objects and then builds data and functions around these objects. The software is divided into a number of small units called objects. The data and functions are built around these objects. The data of the objects can be accessed only by the functions associated with that object. The functions of one object can access the functions of another object. A class is the core of any modern object-oriented programming language such as C++. In OOP languages, it is mandatory to create a class for representing data. A class is kind of like a blueprint of an object that contains variables for storing data and functions to perform operations on the data. A class will not occupy any memory space, and hence it is only a logical representation of data. Now, to create a class, you simply use the keyword class. Now, let's delete this and go to our first exercise about classes, where we will explain everything that I did in the introduction. The exercise is called point. We will need to declare the point class with public data for coordinates x and y, instantiate object A with x and I of class point and assign values to coordinates x and y, and print the object A. Let's get to our class. So like I said, we need to use the keyword class, and our class was called point. Now at the end of the brackets, we always need to have a semicolon because we will have an error if we don't have a semicolon. Now we are going to write public and two fields, double x and double y. Now, what's this public word? Public means that these fields, x and y, can be accessed inside of this class, inside of another class, and inside of the main function. So basically you can access these fields everywhere you want. Now there's two other different keywords. There is private and protected. Private, I'm going to show you what that means later, but protected, we are going to talk about that in the later videos. So let's go to our main function. Now we are going to create an object. How do we create an object? We use the name of the class and write P1. Now, like we said, the class is like kinda a template. So what do we do when we create an object? It's like we kinda get so that we can access all of the fields or methods or functions that are in our class. So let's write some coordinates. Enter coordinates. Sin. Now, how do we access this field x? We use the object p1 dot the name of the field, which is x, and we do the same for y. Now we are just going to print them. p1 dot x p1 dot y. Let's close the bracket and add an end line at the end. So let's test our first exercise. For example, we are going to add 6 and 6.5. There you go. This is how the coordinates work. Now we are going to do the same class, but we are going to use the private keyword. So what's the difference? Now we are going to have private instead of public. Now when we use private, these fields can only be accessed inside of the class. As you can see in our main functions, we have errors because we can't access them because they are private. Now, how can we access them? We will need to do some methods that are called setters and getters. Setters are for initializing the field and getters are for getting the value. Now, because we don't need to return nothing when we set the value, we always use void set and the name of the field, which is x in this case. And inside of the brackets, we will have double x. We always use the name which the field was created, that kind of type. And we simply use this x is equal to x. Now what's this? This is a pointer which points to this field. Now it's clear that it's this parameter. When we use this x, it means that we get to the field x. Now we are going to do the same thing for y. Do the same thing. And now we are going to do getters so we can get them. Now, when we write the getters, we need the type which the field was created. So in this case, it's double. Write get x. Inside of the brackets, we don't need nothing. And we are just simply going to return x. Now we are going to do the same thing for y. Get y and return the y. Now let's go to our main function and delete these. Instead of this, we are going to have double x and y. We are going to read them. X and y. And now we are going to use the object so we can initialize those objects. You can see we have set x and set y. First we are going to give the value to x and then do the same thing with p1.setY. But what's the problem? We also have an error here. The problem is because we didn't write public here. We write public so we can use these methods in our main function. And as you can see, the error is gone. Now, how do we get the value? Instead of p1.x, we just write p1.getx and p1.getY. We can try it, run it again, and write different coordinates like 9 and 10.3. As you can see, it's good. Now we are going to go on and show what's a constructor. When we create an object, the class automatically creates a default constructor. So we have a default constructor and a constructor with parameters. The problem is when we don't have a constructor, when we create an object, it creates a default constructor automatically. But when we have a constructor with parameters, how do we create a constructor? We use the name of the class, point, and inside we have double x and double y. As you can see, we have an error here because we have a constructor with parameters and we don't have a default constructor. So we will also need to create a default constructor with no parameters and set the default value for x and y so that they are equal to 0. Now, what's the point of the constructor? The constructor is like initializing the fields. It's like using uh, all setters at once. Like we can use set x and set y at the same time. We just write with this pointer, this x is equal to x, and this y is equal to y. We are also going to do going to print them inside of our class. Print the points so that our main function is simpler. We're going to copy this, paste it here. Now instead of p1.getX, we can just simply write x, and instead of getY, we can just simply write I. Now I'm going to show you the constructor with the default constructor, p1 dot print the points. Let's see what that gives us. As you can see, it prints the print function, but it goes to the default constructor when x and y are initialized as 0. But when we enter x and I, for example, I'm going to create another object. I'm going to name it p2, and when we write p2 dot print the points, and simply add, not simply add, but inside of the, when we create it, we can just simply add x and y. So when we print it, it will show us our values. As you can see, 3 and 3.6, for example. And there you go, guys. These are the basics of understanding the classes. Make sure to tune in into our other videos, and we will keep in touch. See you later.